excited to be here again with Kelli today. This is Tandy with the Sustainable Alaska podcast. And today, Kelli and I are going to talk about, actually, I'm going to ask questions. Kelli's going to give her amazing knowledge. We're going to talk a little bit about cows versus goats because, for someone wanting to delve into the milking lifestyle, the raw milk, and wanting to provide it on their farm, man, there's a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of things to consider. So, Kelli, I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. You have both, so you're a good resource for this.
Yeah, this is a hot topic. I feel like I actually get asked this a lot, and we talk about this quite a bit. So it's lots to either side of the situation.
Well, and I think the bottom line is there is no right or wrong,
Correct.
because it's going to look far different for someone, for one family than it's going to look for another, and that's okay. So being able to talk about that. But before we do that, let's hear what's going on at your farm.
I'll be honest, ours, like, it was a quieter week, which I'm actually really happy about. No baby animals, no new situations on any sides. It's been really nice weather, which has been really fun for ice cream. I think the biggest thing that probably happened was at the farmer's market on Saturday, we went through 9 3-gallon containers. Like, we have a setup where I have 12 different flavors of goat milk ice cream, and we do scoop ice cream. And the girl and I, Allie and I, that do ice cream, we were like scooping so furiously. I think my hand still has like a blister on it, that we went through 9 of them, and like we're putting new ones in. And then I was like, "Hey, do you have another chocolate?" And she's like, "No, I thought I had seconds of all this." And so, like, she's down making ice cream today. And so it was really fun though. The weather was nice, people were happy, and so it's always I there's something really special about ice cream, and like when people try it and they go, oh, that's so good. Like that's really fun. And then for them to be like, "This is goat milk?" I'm like, "Yep, it's goat milk ice cream." So that's our big thing. But I feel like you had like the most action this
Well,
week.
I was when you were like you went through your 9 3-gallon tubs of ice cream. I was like, man, we should have had you here on the farm. We would have put you through some ice cream, man.
Man, we would have had fun, huh?
Oh
We
my
also
God.
That's what's so stinky about Alaska. I mean, truly, we are an ocean apart. Like, I was looking at, like, trying to get to your place because I'm going back and forth on I'm supposed to go at the end of the month. And I was like, maybe I'll drive, and I'll drive all the way up to Big Lake. And I was like, that is a jaunt, like my 12-hour ferry ride to get into Homer and then to get all the way to Big Lake. But
We're a long ways from Homer. We really are. Yeah.
however, let's hear about your opening week.
Oh my gosh. So we were open Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday of last week. And here's the thing. Gene has always said, because every year we go out and we look at the bushes, and he always says every year, your berry bushes are going to double in production until they reach full production. So that's all great. So you figure that, that first year you get like 20 berries. So the next year you get like 40 or 50 berries. That's all fine and good. Well, when you one year are getting 5 or 6 pounds off of a bush and the next year you get 10 pounds off a bush, that's a lot. That's a huge, massive increase in production. Of course, now a lot of our bushes are mature. This is the year they mature. So, or about half of them. So we usually have about 40 people out, and it went really fast the first day. And I think it was because there's so much more berries on the bushes. And so on Saturday morning, we just still had a lot of berries left. And part of what happens is the timing, you can't just dribble this out until August. When the berries are ready, they need to get picked within a week or two.
Right.
So I said, Gene, I don't know how we're going to do this, but what if we just open to the public? Just let everybody that wants to come out to the farm. And he said, all right, let's do it. So we'd hired one gal to come, a dear friend of mine, and she was so fabulous with the customers, but she'd never worked for us before. So she had to learn everything on the fly. And then another friend came out. She's actually our neighbor, and I had just texted her and I said, "We're open for to the public for like 3 hours. Do you want to come just for the first couple hours? Because it's kind of hard when people get here. They have kind of a long trek, and then we got to get them set up on their row and find out what they want. And we like to. What are they going to do with their berries? They get to walk around and sample some and decide where they want to pick and all that. So it's kind of a specialized, personalized experience. And so I was thinking, well, with three of us doing that and Jean down in the parking lot kind of directing people to us, we can handle this. Well, we did have some appointments. Most of our appointments came in the morning. I'm sure they were glad. So around 12:30, it was supposed to open at 1, but people always come early. Around 12:30, I noticed there was kind of a lot of people heading our way. And then the floodgates opened. And throughout the day, we were open for 6 hours. We had over 1,000 people come onto the farm. And it was I have to say it was chaos just because I mean it was a lot, and it's hard to give personalized service to that, and they weren't all there at one time. Like, remember, it's over a 6 hour span, but a lot of them were there in that 3 hour time that we were open to the public. Most of them were there during that time. But the coolest thing happened, Kelly. So we had definitely had to kind of on the fly change what we were doing. We ran out of picking buckets. So we had to start, we have our scale tiered to our own picking bucket. So we prefer that they pick out of that. So we're not having to weigh things. And that went out the door because we had no more picking buckets. And um, but what felt to me like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry we're out of buckets, or whatever. People are like, that's okay, we'll figure it out. And everybody was so gracious. Everybody was having fun. There was so much laughter. Like, if you can imagine, there was probably 200 or 300 people there at a time, at least. And if you can imagine just a whole orchard filled with people laughing and chattering and just talking and having a good time and picking their berries, and kids picking and asking questions and talking to people, and it was it was a lot, but man, it was a fun day. And
Oh,
at the end of the day, when it was all over and everybody left, it kind of makes me cry. Well, at the end of the day, so about 3:15, one of our gals came and she got me and she said, Abby's phone is dead. And that's what we use for checkout. And she and I check out together when the line gets, when we get kind of a line, then she and I would check out together. Well, there were still a lot of people out there and we were closing in 45 minutes. And so people stood around until about 4:30 because it took a long time to get them checked out because we were down to one phone. Um, and they were so gracious about it. Like, I just let Abby do all the checkout, and I walked through the line and talked to people and asked what they were going to do with their berries. And I'm so sorry you're having to be here late. And they're like, we're having such a good time. And it
oh,
just, I'm telling you, Kelly, I sometimes when I'm on social media and, somebody will ask an innocent question and then people get rude about it. And I get kind of down on humanity. And I'm like, man, people just suck sometimes is my attitude. And then I get to meet all these incredible people. I'm like, no, they don't. They're just not on social media griping because they're too busy picking berries and taking care of their family and living life. And man, we just had 1,000 really neat people come through our farm. That was the coolest part. So
that is
neat.
so neat. I feel like you have a way of drawing lots of people, like thousands of people for Homestead expos, and now you just open your doors and trot in 1,000 people just to anyway, it's fantastic though.
It was very cool. And the fact that our neighbors were very gracious because people were parked up and down the road, and it
Oh,
was it was really cool. But I don't think it's one person attracting. I think it's people craving that community. I really do. And when you get out here, you have no choice but to talk to, well, because they were kind of packed in there. Everybody only had like two or three plants to pick on in their little spot, and which isn't normally how it works. And um, so you're kind of talking to the person next to you, and uh, I don't know. It just, and people seemed to, it's like they left better than they came, a lot of them. And that just felt so good. And it wasn't anything I did. It was the people they were talking to next to, and I mean, Jean did build an incredibly beautiful farm, and I know that has a lot to do with it, but it's, the two combined, it's just really cool. So
so how does that work? Do you have berries left?
No, not much. We went and looked. They picked us pretty clean. We do have some, but it's going to be a lot more. It's a little harder. It's like, when you go up to Hatcher Pass 2 weeks into blueberry season, you have to look for the blueberries now. It's going to be the same out here. But yeah, so
That's incredible.
it was fun. It was really fun.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
So if we could somehow have your ice cream
I
and our
know.
beer, I mean, you can make honeyberry ice cream, which is like the world.
Oh, I would love to try and do that.
Yeah, see, then wouldn't we would have made people so happy?
It is salmonberry season here, so we have salmonberries everywhere. And I don't, like I can't help but go to the woods, but this was that was yesterday. Was it yesterday morning? The morning before, I get like a red alert call, like, hey, there's a bear right behind the dairy. Like, watch out. The bears are all over up into the bushes right now. And like I got a picture of it, like right where I was, and I was like, "Oh, I don't see anything." And the berry bushes are right there. Do you have like, are there lots of like? Do you have a predator for your bushes? That sounds odd, doesn't it?
Oh, no. So we have a 10-foot fence.
Okay,
So that keeps everybody out.
okay, perfect.
So we did that just to keep the moose out because it's way too big of an investment to let a moose get in there. They destroy
Absolutely,
things so fast. So,
absolutely.
but yeah, I never thought about that. We had people who had just come back from fishing and they said they'd been picking salmon berries, and we don't have salmon berries up here. So you and I need to do a swap. We
Yeah,
need
we
to
do.
swap honey berries for salmon berries because I miss them.
I've never tried a honeyberry ever.
We'll fix that. Oh, that's fun. Okay. All right. So just one quick question about your farm in particular. Are you back to selling Maggie? Is it Maggie? Maggie's your, well,
Maggie,
are
yeah,
you selling her milk now? Or are you selling,
yes, yes.
you're selling cow milk and goat milk?
Yep. So this week we had um goat milk, cow milk with our feta, our chevre, and then I was able to get skyr cow milk and goat milk skyr made this week
That's
with the
awesome.
milk ice cream. Yeah. But
So
Maggie
that's,
she has gone up in production, and the cream content, like I've been milking goats for, a month and a half, 2 months, whatever, waiting for Maggie. So such different milk. So different. It's
it
so
is.
interesting, but so different.
So that's the perfect segue into
Oh
our
yeah.
topic today. So let's let's start there. Let's just start with the basics. So what is, if you're looking at well, do you milk goats by the quart or are you doing them by the half gallon too?
It I've gotten to where it's been a quart jar, like the quarts, 2 quarts is what I am mostly milking. That's what most everybody really prefers. I do have quart jars, but honestly, people get frustrated when I purchase the milk, one quart. They're just like, oh, can we have more, please? So
Yeah.
I'm always like, bring back more jars. Like I don't have any left. So
Oh
yeah,
man,
anyway.
they're so expensive. So if somebody's looking at a half gallon jar of cow milk and a half gallon jar of goat milk, what's going to be visually, what's going to be the difference? Let's start there.
Right now, like my goat milk currently is super white. Like it's very white goat milk. I do definitely control what my animals are eating. However, my cow milk is definitely a little bit more yellow. I mean, tinted more. Like Maggie was on full pasture up until calving. And Steven was funny. My husband, he was drinking her milk. He's like, "This is so good. Is this like the special milk?" And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, the special, like, good milk. And I was like, and I'm kind of like, what are you talking? And he's like, I was like, colostrum? And he's like, yeah. I said, no, Maggie calved like 12 days ago, Steven. It's not colostrum. Like, he's a city kid fully. So, it's always like, what's going on? But Maggie's milk is definitely, compared to the goat milk, it's definitely a creamier content. The other thing, when, goat milk sits, you're gonna get like a small little line of cream on top, to where Maggie's within just 2 hours of sitting, like it's like this takes a day and a half, this takes like 2 hours, and So you can see the, extreme difference in cream content. Um, Now it's so interesting to me this year, especially because we go like toe to toe. I have got my goat milk diehards, and I didn't think I would have them. Like I was thinking, like, oh, maybe we'll back off a little bit. No, like they want their goat milk, and then I still have my cow milk crew. My goat milk is not goaty per se. It's not gamey. It doesn't really have that off-putting flavor to it. And so I think that that's helpful. It's definitely a fresh, maybe a little, I would say earthy. Can that be a thing? Taste to it. Now, Maggie, I give people choices. So I do pasteurized and I do raw milk. That raw milk, feel like just tastes straight up like ice cream. It is so sweet and so creamy and so good. It just is. I much prefer cow milk to goat milk at this point. Nothing wrong with the goat milk. It's fine. But Maggie's milk is just so creamy and delicious. So
It is. It is. And to clarify, the before we head into the difference in flavor, is it true that goat milk is just naturally homogenized? So even though you only get that little bit of cream, there's cream in the milk. It still has the fat content. It just doesn't separate like the cow milk does,
that's
correct?
yeah. Yep. It about has the about, probably the same amount of cream that you would have. It doesn't though. It doesn't separate. And so unless you're going to get a cream separator and go through it, I have folks that are really like, can we just have the cream? I'm like, you cannot, but you can go get a cream separator if you want to, but I will not be doing that step. So yeah,
Yeah,
true.
fair enough. That makes sense. And so how many do you know about how many gallons a day you're getting?
Yeah, this is where goats and cows are so different. So right now I have 10 goats that are on the line milking. And I have some goats that give a gallon for each milking. Other goats, are less, and they'll, especially those first fresheners, they're going to give a couple of quarts, probably. But all in all, so I have a mixture of goats, and I do that purposefully. So like I have high butterfat producing goats that don't give as much quantity, but then I have like Sonnets who give a high quantity, but not near as much because I'm doing a lot of different things. So I'm pulling in about 7 to 7.5 gallons. I'm still sharing with baby goats a little bit, so I don't always know the exact amount, but that's about 7.5 gallons. So 10 goats when I put them on the line one time, that's what I'm gonna get, and then
This is per milking.
yeah,
So you're getting like 14 or 15 gallons a day of just goat milk? Holy
yes,
moly.
yeah, yeah, and then right now Maggie in a day in a 24-hour period, she's giving me 8.5 gallons for one cow.
Wow. Wow.
So, um, and there are so many areas that you can dive into that I have gone all over the place with cows and goats. Because like, yep, that's one cow, and you can be like, that's incredible, one cow. But I have 10 goats. I have 10 chances on the other side to my one chance, with Maggie. So say something would happen and Maggie develops mastitis or there's an issue with her. I am out all my milk, right? So if you're taking care of that to where, gosh, if one goat gets mastitis or has an udder issue, I'm going to take one goat off the line and I'm still going to get 7 gallons of milk the next day or, 6.5 gallons of milk. And so that's immediate. If something, that's why I get so stressed out when Maggie's getting ready to calve or my cow is getting ready to calve. Because if something happens to that cow, that was 9 months, actually more, and you would understand this right now. It's a year, almost 2 years in the making, that first year that you are waiting and you are investing and you are putting your time, energy, and effort into that animal. And then you get to where they have a calf and so many things can go wrong. And you'd like to think it's not. It's not like a beef cow. It's not like we have our cattle on Woody. We don't even touch that. I come over one day and I have 10 calves on the ground. Fantastic. Maggie, I'm like staying up 24/7 because you have a high producing animal. You have the opportunity for there to be a calcium, issue for the calf to get stuck, all these different things. And then again, you're out your 2-year investment. Goats, I have had this goat and I will breed depending on where you're at. Now, some goats are not like this. Because of the situation that I'm in, I'll breed a lot of my goats at 9 months old. I don't want them to get big and get, like a fatty udder to where they're not going to be a good producer. So I'm going to breed at 9 months old. They have a 5 months gestation. So I've have a year and just a little bit in on that. And then I'm already getting milk.
Right. That's huge.
Yeah.
And I like that you talked about the fact that there's a lot, there's so, like you said, there's so much to unpack with this. With a cow, when you have one cow and she's providing all your milk for your family, which obviously is enough for one family and more. She also, when she has to be bred every year and she has to be dried up for a while. So when you have one cow and that's all your entire milk source, you have what, 2.5 months
Months at least. Yeah.
where you're not getting any milk at all, period. That's it. Whereas when you have two goats, or I mean, you could have two cows, obviously, but if you had two goats, you could stagger that. So you're
Yeah.
never, even though you may, even if you're selling milk shares or whatever, you may not be able to sell shares, but at least your family's in milk. And you're so right. You start drinking that stuff and it becomes an addiction. Of all, if I was dirt poor and had to get rid of everything, I just don't know that I would get rid of raw milk. Of all the things. Gosh, dang, it's good.
I took my big deep freezer this year, and no, it is not the same as fresh. However, I figured it all out and I froze tons of milk. And then, like I even froze goat milk on the side because for a couple, making soap and having some different things. But and then we also I froze our skier because my husband has a really strong addiction to that. And so I didn't make it on the milk. We drank. I have 3 growing boys, and so I did not allot that the boys would be growing and continuing to want more than they did when we were drying off. So we did run out of milk, and they are such milk snobs. Like, it is like it's like, "Mom, where is Maggie's milk? Like, what is the," like, and then if I go to the store and get like a gallon of milk, it will go bad. Like, it just sits there because like it's just not the same. Anyway, so I did try and freeze Maggie's milk this year to get us to goat milk, season before then Maggie calved again. So
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we talked about kind of the difference between goat and cow milk, what it looks like, kind of quantities and stuff like that. How about flavor? I do want to kind of dig into that because honestly, I've had a lot of goat milk. I've had goat milk that it just was gross. That's all there is to it. It wasn't it was, and my guess is it was probably old, maybe not properly handled. I don't know what all. I mean, I also bought milk from a cow share once that was clearly not very clean and it was gross too. So, but my daughter-in-law has goats and she is extremely clean, very meticulous. She's very careful about what her goats eat. Her milk is great. Like I feel like there's more of a spectrum with goat milk than there is with cow milk. Can you kind of address that a little bit?
yeah, yeah, there definitely is. And I am one of those people that really is thoughtful about what my goats eat. Now there's a couple of sides to that too, and I think it probably can go with cattle too. And you know, I I definitely pick what they eat and I'm careful. And so they have a very consistent diet. They have no stress in their life. That's another really important one. I mean, goats are so finicky. And I only know this from being grade A certified and having my milk tested each month. And like if I were gone and I'd get back, all my counts were so different, than when I'm consistently there. Like if my husband and boys are milking and then I get back and we do milk samples, they're off the chart. Like they're just so funky to when I'm there. And again, it changes, I think, the taste of your milk too. Handling is a big thing. I I love goats. Like they are my favorite farm animal. However, um, we prefer cow milk. I mean, I just we do. And I love goats and I love goat and I love our products, like now there is and like we have a Chevrolet and it has a very light um goat taste, but it's probably the closest I would have, but I actually have folks that will complain at the store because it's not goaty enough. They're like,
Wow.
"Oh, we expected this to have more of a goat flavor to it." And I'm like,
Wow.
"That's exactly what I'm trying not to do." Like, I don't want to have a goaty, f flavor, but I've gotten criticism, I guess, for that, when it came because if you go to someplace and you put goat cheese, you know that you have goat cheese on your salad compared to like a cow milk cheese. So, yes, you can have delicious goat milk. I think that there are times when that goat milk, um, definitely, like I said, cheese making, our feta is so good and it's a goat cheese. Now, like our skyr is a little bit more tangy, which is like a yogurt, than the creamy, like deepness of the cow milk skyr. So again, though, you have the preferences of people, and I've learned that my taste buds are definitely not the same as other folks. I have a large crew now again that prefers that goat milk, and I don't know. I don't. I My boys don't wanna drink goat milk, especially if there's cow milk available, like, they just prefer it. But, like, again, that raw milk and there's a difference, I think, too, with that fresh milk, that same day milk that you can drink, and, regardless of which side, you choose, I guess it just comes down to personal preference. It's harder, in my opinion, to make goat milk taste really good.
You have to be very diligent, it sounds like.
My
Um,
opinion, though, I'll probably get hammered for that one from all my goat friends. Please be nice to me. I'm just my experience.
you know, maybe goat milk isn't as forgiving. I know something that Kayla had talked about was, she was having a if I hope I get this right, yogurt. She was trying to make yogurt and she was having a hard time because it does have to cure for a while. And she did feel like it kind of changed in flavor, and kind of went to that, like more goaty flavor for sure. But again, she's meticulous with how she does things. So but I also think when you have your own, you're tasting it more, like you're tasting every little idiosyncrasy, whereas if you're just picking up some from the farmer and you're drinking it just occasionally, then you maybe aren't noticing
Right.
every little nuance to is there a nutritional difference between the two?
Lightly, I don't think enough to really, I when I was really just going all for full bore with the like goat milk, I was trying to find the not good parts about cow milk for a while. I was like, oh, they kind of line up about equal. Like,
Yeah.
yep, there's, can be a little bit more protein in some or, another, but really all in all, the biggest difference that I do find is the protein, that alpha to beta protein. And there truly are people that cannot drink cow milk. And that's where goat milk is really just this incredible superfood, and when I originally started with goats, being a remote disconnected island, I knew that that was something that if infants and toddlers, didn't have formula, that goat milk could more likely substitute. And it was easier to stay in milk 365 days than it was, with a cow. And so I do have people, and that's where at times, when I think, oh, I'm going to switch my goat milk ice cream to cow milk ice cream, I'm going to change this up. But there are people that truly can digest this ice cream that cannot,
Mm.
other ice cream, that
Yours
cow
is
milk
the
ice
only ice cream they get, Kelly. That's a big
cream.
deal.
I know, but then I was like, and I do like this weekend we had a lot of tourists and they're like, so all this is goat milk? You don't have any cow milk options? And I was like, nope, I don't. Like this is it. This is like it's all goat milk. But I thought, oh, maybe I could start bringing in a couple of cow milk options, maybe.
You're gonna have to expand. That's all there is to it. You need a bigger store.
Right.
And two of you.
Couple extra. Anyway, yeah, there are slight differences. I see more differences when it comes to pasteurized to raw milk. That's where
Mm,
I see more differences. And that
wow.
anyway.
That's good stuff too. Um, so okay, so let's talk about the actual keeping of the animals.
Yeah.
So let's specifically speak to the person who, I mean, I'm kind of creating an avatar in my mind. So I'm thinking, they already have chickens, they already have a garden. Now they're thinking like this next step is they want to provide their own milk source. Okay. So obviously there's a massive difference between a milk cow and a goat just in size, right?
Right.
And obviously, and we know that there's like a quantity difference. But what are some other differences between the two? Like if they're kind of sitting on the fence trying to decide, they don't have any milk allergies, so they can go either way. Um, what are some other things to consider?
Right. This is again with you really need to evaluate what you have at your your farmstead, your homestead, what you really have available and how you are willing to let your animal live. That's those are a couple of things to think about. I had somebody tell me once that if it doesn't hold water, it will not hold goats. Maybe it's not quite that bad, but you really do need a solid fence setup. It's funny when you said like, "Oh, I have chickens and they have a garden," like 5 alarms went off that I'm like, "If you want to keep your garden, be careful. Like put them far away, put your goats far away." Because I've had beautiful kale and cabbage and those are goats' favorites. That they get out and those go away quickly. So, obviously really good fencing. However, this last week my young pregnant cow, so she's just a yearling heifer. She stepped right over one. She pushed down the fence, and then just walked over. And I get a call, and they're like, "Kelli, your cow is out," and I'm like, "How did?" Well, so then let's talk about that moment because your animal is out. Your animal's going to get out. If you have a living being, it is going to get out regardless if it's a goat. You can be so good at building fences and doing all the things, but you will forget to lock that gate, or there is something that's going to happen. So at what point do you have the means to catch that animal? So a goat can be tricky. You can shake that feed. I'm very fortunate to have very tame animals. So when you're, unless like Tandy, you're in such a great position because your calf loves you regardless. Like she loves you and you are her food source and she has a connection with you. So that first and foremost is important to consider. So as far as your space that you have, just knowing if you're going to be able to catch your animal. And again, that's when you only have one chance with a cow, to where multiples. Now Maggie got out last year and I remember like running across because we're in between two fairly busy roads, and I just foresaw my cow that I had invested years into running up onto the road and getting hit because nobody in Kodiak is expecting a cow onto the road. And that's when I kind of messed up my hand. I broke my hand. It was one of those little things where you're like, "Oh, that hurts so bad." And my son didn't get the halter on well. And I was like, "Grayson Foreman, like this can never happen again. We can't be chasing this cow." But the next part of that, so we've established that you need good fencing, whether it's a goat or a cow, really quality good fencing. We've established that if they get out, you have to be able to catch that animal. And what kind of an animal do you have? The next one is what kind of ground do you have? Kodiak is a temperate rainforest. In 2000 or 2024, we had 90 inches of rain. We are a muddy mess here. And so I can have goats on ground and they have light footprints. They are not tearing up the soil. So they can walk over that wet ground and do where they need to go. A cow sinks and takes out your roots that you're going to have, that you think about. So if it's wet or depending on where you're at, you're gonna have a super muddy mess. Now, what kind of ground do you have available? What kind of space do you have? What kind of overhead areas? A cow just takes up more space. Now, if you wanna dry dock a cow, you see that in a lot of dairies. They never go outside. They stay inside their shed. They have their walk-ins that's not how I want to do things. Personally, I want my cow to be able to get up and I want the whole lift your tail and run if she decides she wants to do that. So we have area I have to bring in rock a couple of times a year where it's wet to make sure she can stand in the dry, because that's another thing. You're going to get your foot rot, otherwise. So you want to make sure that cow or that goat. So the area that you have available, can you rotate your cow a little bit, in the winter time, then further, again, if it gets really cold where, in Delta Junction, their cows have to be inside all winter long. Do you have the space to do that? And cow manure is way different than goat manure. And so then that's my final, what are you ready to deal with manure? Because, the first time Grayson, my oldest, saw goat manure, he's like, Mom, why is that goat pooping black beans? And I was like, oh, that's cute, Gray. And it was in the car. We were bringing the goat home and it's going to the bathroom. And we just, clean that up, to the difference of when a cow goes to the bathroom and his experience of the splat and the mess. Goats are so clean and beautiful and just never want to be dirty, never want to lay in their manure. It's just like they are prim and they are proper. And then in comes Maggie and she's like, I went to the bathroom and I laid in it and it was great. And then I rubbed it all over my udder and good luck, clean that up. But then you're just like, oh, they're so dirty compared to a beautiful. And then you got the darn tail swoosh, that wraps around. Ugh. But the milk is, so they're good and bad. So that was a really long-winded answer. But do you have a good spot finally, that your manure can be? Now, if you take care of that manure, I save that manure and I turn it into soil. It's like the most valuable asset that you can possibly have if you are willing to put in the time to bring in that manure and then stir it. The quality of soil that you can get is outstanding.
And really for either one, whether it's goat or
Yeah.
cow. But you're right. And I did also the flip side of that is, just for anyone who's considering livestock, the cow will always go to the bathroom where you're going to step next. That's what
Yeah.
I want to do. Why is it? How do they do that? It
Oh,
and then out of I have to access the chicken coop. I have to go through the cow pen to access chicken coop. And not every time, but it sure feels like it. I step into the chicken coop, I do whatever I need to do in there, and I step out. It's just that very first step. She's gone to the bathroom, and it's like, really? Did you have to right there?
right.
Yeah.
This is also, if we're touched on the manure side, and maybe this is just being on the island life side of things. I feed my cow grain. Some people have different opinions on that. I have to be able to sustain a cow in Alaska, in my part of Alaska, how I'm doing it. I need to give her grain. So, but her manure that then she poops out, she doesn't always digest everything. So rodents are a big possibility, because of that manure that you're going to have. To where goats, man, they have digested that down. It's just, it needs less. Anyway, it's just differences in the
Sure,
manure that you're
sure.
going to get. So
So
I really do my best to get that manure out of her pen.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Um, okay. So we talked about let's see. What are the differences in the physical demand between the two? So what is you physically, what's demanded of you um between a goat and a cow?
Yeah. Goats have become harder. Now, if you have a lot of little people and you want them to be really involved, goats are fantastic. There's just nothing quite like it. My boys have gotten kicked in the face by a goat. They are okay. That, thank God we've never gotten kicked in the face by a cow. That would be a little bit different, of a situation. You think about it though, if you have an unruly cow that you're milk, every cow gets milked for the first time and you're going to get kicked again. Like I bruised when I was getting Maggie set up to milk for the first time, where I don't so much, with goats. And so that, is as far as just the size of your animal. However, now being in my mid 40s, goats are a lot harder because they're so small. And so it's a lot more up and down. And actually, I feel like I'm wrestling them more and like getting them up onto the milk stand, where Maggie just walks in and she walks out. The goats are getting up onto a stand because they're smaller. Um, I grew up with I guess I grew up with both, but I I feel really comfortable around cows, where I've noticed that, other people, they are intimidating because they're, a 1,200-pound animal compared to, a 150-pound goat. And that's on the large side. So that, that can be, interesting. A goat, if you're having to go in and help deliver baby goats, way easier than, a cow. I can do that with my, my hands, and I get it right there, and I can maneuver and I can do what I need to do. If I'm having to go in with a cow, like I make sure I have a calf puller right there, and I have chains that are close by if need be. As a kid, I had to once come out and there was a stuck calf, and I had to go back and get the four-wheeler, and I had to attach it to be able to pull that calf out, where I've never had to do something like that with a goat. So that side of things. Yeah, like today I opened the gate. Maggie had finished her feed. Ellie Mae's not supposed to have feed yet. Well, Ellie Mae thought for sure that there was feed that she needed to have in that pen. And I just wasn't paying attention because I've got my big old pet cattle. And I opened that gate and Ellie just threw me right up against the side. It was one of those like, get out of my way. And that's 1,000 pounds. It's nailing you, and I came back and I was like, darn you, Ellie, and thankfully I'm more used to it. But, I guess the opportunity for getting hurt worse is with a cow. However, if you're comfortable around livestock, for me now at this point, having, knee replacement, cows are kind of easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously there's a cost difference too. And I think that's gonna I think that a way that a lot of people balance that out is, that with a goat, you're getting, a gallon or so a day, but the goat is cheaper to feed. So, but on a tiny homestead, if you're just if really all you care about is taking care of your family, a gallon of milk a day is plenty.
Yeah.
Few of us need more than that. I mean, you're probably saying, well, my boys go through that in a day. That's probably possible too, but a milk cow is going to give so much more. And you might think even if it was only like 4 gallons a day, which I know a lot of them produce a lot more, but even if it was only 4 gallons a day, that doesn't feel overwhelming on day one. But on day seven, now when you have 28 gallons of milk, suddenly this is a lot of milk to be working through. And so I think that's, milk shares are very popular, and that's a way of recouping that cost, I think, for sure. But what if you're just looking at somehow, if we can somehow compare apples to apples, what would the cost difference be between a goat and you don't have to give exact numbers because it's
No,
going to be different for you on Kodiak than it's going to be for us. And for folks in Delta with the hay fields right there is probably going to be cheaper. But just kind of on I don't know, some kind of a scale or something.
if I'm like Maggie's gonna go through a bag of feed a day about by herself, to
A
where the
50 bag of feed.
for the most part. I mean, like she's gonna eat because by the time we get done with, and again, I feed a lot, but I'm
Mhm.
also getting a lot of milk. And so if you don't want to get as much milk, but you don't have to feed as much. I'm also just terrified of not having a healthy, well-conditioned cow. And so like right now she eats oats and she has chaff hay and she has her dairy goat ration and then she has her alfalfa. pellets, and then you have that cow mineral, and then they get free choice 24/7 Timothy hay that's always out there. And so again, my one cow is going to eat what my 10 to 12 goats will eat in a day. And
Wow.
so, like, I can give a bale of hay to my goats, and I'm going to give a bale of hay to Maggie, you know,
Wow.
and you can take, and that's where, and I have, it depends on this season, obviously when she's eating, as that was one thing that was so interesting, like I don't feed any feed to my cow while they're dry. So if they're, but the hay that they eat goes clear up at that point too. And I hadn't, I wasn't quite expecting, those types of things, but to where I'll spend $37 for a bag of goat feed that I'm going to go through a day, I can expect that from just Maggie
Wow.
in a day.
So production goes up, but cost definitely goes up too. That makes sense.
And there comes a point, and these are the things, and again, I married a city boy, and it was like Wonder Bread and canned beanie weenies kind of stuff, and and it was interesting, I think, and I have the most fantastic in-laws, like I have the most wonderful family, but yet they grew up as farm kids, and so when they got to buy the white bread and they got to eat the bologna, and like it was just a really cool thing, and that I come from a very different family. So there's an importance understanding too that we put this money in, but that's our food money too. And like America, I believe we spend one of the least amounts when it comes to food. To other countries spend a lot more on their food. So it's putting, we don't blink about spending, how much money in another area. So when I think about like Maggie and spending that money on her, I'm spending that, like I could have $150 prescription that I'm having to fill every month too, that I don't have because my cow is, sustaining me. So,
Right. That's so true. And I kind of look at it the same. It's a little different, but right now I'm buying cow shares and I will for a couple more years. And so I have a budget for my milk, but I make my sour cream. I make all of our soft cheeses. I use clabber in breads and things like that. I make kefir for all of our shakes. I make buttermilk, like all the things we make. And so that's decreasing that part of the bill. Ice cream, that's decreasing that part of the bill. So it's totally something to
I'm
consider. Go
I'm
ahead.
curious about this with you, Tandy. Now that you have a calf, and so my husband's an LPC counselor, mental health counselor. How has having that calf though affected your mental even health? Like having that animal at your home and then having the daily responsibility of chores too.
Oh,
Have you
yeah.
have you know I mean, has that affected you at all, you think?
Um, that's a good question, Kelly. You always come up with the best questions. Um, I think I enjoy it. So, sometimes here's the thing. Having an animal forces you to get outside and do things on mornings when you don't want to. It's way fun. Well, first of all, when she was being bottle fed, that was super fun. Now she just slurps out of a bucket and it's just not, we don't have that intimate bond that we had with the bottle. Although when she, even now already, when she drinks out of her bucket, I pet her udder. That probably sounds weird, but
Oh,
she
good.
it's going to be so normal for her, hopefully, when we start milking her because we already are always up in her business when she's eating anyway. So we're hopefully, I mean, I'm trying to do things right and prepare her, but there is I was telling Gene this the other day. The other day he fed for me and I got to sleep in. And I haven't slept in. You don't sleep past 8 o'clock because at 8:01, they have an internal clock because at 8:01, she's, Ma, she's like, I'm dying, I'm starving to death. And and last night we were watching a movie actually, and it had like 10 minutes left. And I was like, she'll be fine. She didn't think so. And the doors were open and she was down there just bellowing all over the place because we were 10 minutes late feeding her. Um, but I look forward to my barn time. And so I don't, that's a it's a hard question because I don't know that it's necessarily helped my mental health, but it forces me to get outside twice a day, even no matter how busy I am. It gets me away from this screen that sometimes is all consuming when you're trying to run a business. Um, and it just there's something so special about going down there, and the chickens and the cow share a barn. So the chickens are peep 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 doing their thing and talking to each other and doing their thing, and Mabel eats, and I get to pet her, and she's a toddler right now, so my time with her isn't as enjoyable as it could be because all she cares to do is headbutt me. We're gonna start weaning her pretty soon, and I feel like she already knows this is how I don't know, but she gets kind of desperate for milk, and she's not getting more milk. Used to be exponentially more milk all the time, and she's not getting that anymore. And I think she's like, but I want more, and I want more, and um, but yeah, you know, that just was a good question because I just love my time down in the barn. I didn't used to spend any time down there at all when we didn't have any animals. So,
I find for myself that it's, we had milk animals because of physical health, physical health issues. And I think that they were for me became just a great, and I was the same way. Like here I'm married to a mental health guy and I'm always like, come on, like I'm fine, like come on, Stephen. But I receive so much joy from that and the connection. So like I'll sit there and I can just lay my head on Maggie and I can go somewhere else, or you have those goats and you have that connection, and it's just beyond yourself. And so whether it's goats or whether it's cows, they each are unique too, and I feel like they give back. So I guess all that to say, like, I think I've probably saved tons of money on mental health, whatever it might be, at some point, because I feel great. Like I was like, I just have never dealt with feeling depressed or having, like, there are tough times. I think, like those darkest days in Alaska are tricky, but you're right. You have to get out. You have to think about something bigger than yourself. And anyway, I think just that sometimes those things can just be, we don't always equate. I guess that goes back to the financial question. We don't always equate. So you're getting a lot back from that cow. That, man, were you going to have to go to the movies? Were you going to have to go outside to a different place? What are the things that you are able to get satisfaction from that fill a void that, sometimes otherwise we're searching for and trying to, like, is that your morning cup of coffee that you didn't have to go buy because you had that? I don't know. A lot of
yeah.
different areas.
Well, and there's a special bond that's formed with any animal that provides food for you anyway. That's just the truth of it, whether you're gathering eggs from chickens or whatever the animal's doing. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I do have a couple more questions I want to try and get definitely talk about that. And two big ones are the first one is um goats and cows eat different things. So if someone is wanting to forage their animal, whether they want to have grass for their cow. But goats aren't foraging on grass. They're not. So when you're making that decision, when you're looking at your environment, what kind of an environment would a goat just feel very happy in? If you could just turn them loose.
Inside your 10-foot fence, a goat would love. With all those bushes and berries, they'd clear you
At
out.
my oh,
That's
which
at
is
your place.
exactly why we don't have goats.
Exactly. I like immediately I was like, never get goats, Tandy.
No,
Like that
no.
would be such a bad day. Like, oh my goodness. Like they are want to eat every bush and bramble and berry that they can possibly find. And a cow will be like, oh, those are nice. Like maybe I'll eat one with my tongue, wrap it around my tongue, and then I'm gonna graze the grass
Yes.
around. So yeah, a goat's gonna clear out every bush and berry and leave your grass. They are not your lawnmowers. Your cow is such a better grazer when it comes to that. But further, like I know that if my grass gets too high, my cow's not going to eat that either. Like you're better off to mow if you can't get your cow over everything so that they can continue
Yeah.
to eat. And anyway, so
Goats would be super happy even in brush. They
yep.
don't need that. So when you're thinking about, do you have to make a field? No, not with goats. You
Right.
certainly. Okay, and then one of the last things I wanted to talk about was the different things that you can make. And this question came to mind a while back, and I keep forgetting to ask, and this is a good time. Do people make cow milk soap, or is goat milk soap a thing of its own? I know you can make soap with tallow,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
that's a dead
that's
end.
that is such a good question. You can make cow milk soap.
Okay.
But they would say that the all the benefits from goat milk. Goat milk's so much better. Gosh, I should get my cheat sheet out about why goat milk is so beneficial for, your skin. They talk about it being so good for eczema and, just like I do a goat milk lotion and then I do goat milk soap. And again, just like, when you drink it, people are like, "Oh, this is so much better on my skin. I don't break out when I use the goat milk
Mm.
lotion or the goat milk soap compared to, whatever they're getting from the store." I'd
So
love to think we
another thing, that's
do.
another thing to consider if you were going to get goats versus cows. Are you wanting to make your own soap with the product? I mean, I guess it's another use for the product, because you can only, in the end, you can only drink so much milk and eat so much cheese.
I have a friend in Wisconsin, and she has started the cutest little goat milk lotion and soap business. Actually, a couple of different ones, and that has become, they can drink their milk, but then they get to use that milk for the value added. If you have a freeze dryer, freeze dry that milk, and then you make it into a bath soak. If you want to, something like that would be really a fun bonus. Goat milk, if I have excess, I make that the Mexican caramel. Is it Cayete or something like that? But you can the cow milk too, but those are good value added products. So like your dulce de leche with your cow milk, if you have a lot of extra, that's a great farmer's market item. And you can do that. Like that is an item that you could do even in, I'm thinking Alaskans, that you could have if you wanted to, or great Christmas presents.
Yeah.
Um, so you can do extra things to that milk, but the goat milk is definitely better when it comes to if you're going to make a lotion or a soap, something like that.
Okay. Well, I think we covered it all. I think this was really, Kelly, you're so knowledgeable, and I appreciate it's so there's such it's so great having someone who actually lives in Alaska who can answer these questions, because you understand even better than we do, probably, like nobody is getting hay for $2 a bale out of the field. There's none of these things are happening like they do in the lower 48. So getting to hear the real experiences and what the cost and the limitations, and I mean, bears, shoot. I
Right.
mean, there's all the things we need to prepare for and think about. And so I just appreciate you being willing to share your insight.
The last thing, and we kind of talked about this, I think, before we pushed record too, was just when you're purchasing that animal, a lot has to do with what you're getting yourself into at the very beginning, be it a cow or be it a goat. So do your due diligence before, because that will change your overall experience. So one of the things that I really suggest, if you don't have people that you know and you trust, ask for the blood work. Yeah, ask for that paperwork. Like, have you, as your herd tested, um, if you are getting a older milk cow, that's a little bit like what you're doing, Tandy, in my opinion, is the way to go. You get to raise that calf, you know everything about it. Sometimes that's not an option, but it was interesting, even at the Homestead Expo, I'm standing and talking to folks and I'm hearing just some horror stories about cows that they got, but they didn't know that the cow had this condition until they were starting to get milk. And then now we're stuck in this, you have a 1,200-pound animal and you don't know what to do with it. Or
That's
with
true.
a goat, it's really easy to bring home a disease, and that'll mess up your entire herd, and you're not going to be able to drink any milk, and it will be very sad. And, and that's where like it can be good for your health, like your mental, it can be really tricky too. So do your due diligence. I know it's really fun to like find a goat online and just go grab it. I would just highly recommend you not do that unless you have a place that you can really put that animal away from everybody else for some months, and until they're healthy. So
And ask, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't want to get into details, but we just we know someone who just lost their baby cow, because and about lost mom, because that cow she was a Jersey on the small side, and she was bred to a big beef cow, and so the calf was stillborn. It was completely deformed. It didn't ever stand a chance, and it couldn't they it was difficult to get that animal out of her. And there's nothing wrong with asking questions. And here's the thing, if somebody's offended at your questions, there's your answer. Leave. And
And I think it's also really important that, like, when I inquired about buying Maggie, my milk cow, they said, "Can we have a couple of references on you?" And I was
oh,
like, "Excuse me?" And they're like, "We just want to make sure that you have the ability to feed this cow and it's going to go to a good home." And at first I was like, "Hey, like, I'm I'm paying you a lot of money." And then I thought, "That's fantastic because I would wanna do the same thing." Those are and so you know the type of quality of how you're gonna get too if the people you're buying it from are like, "I know you have the money, but I'm gonna do my due diligence on you." So you're knowing the quality of an animal, and man, I have not been disappointed at all.
that's really cool. Yeah, and the majority of us are in this together. I think what gets people most of the time is just we don't know. We've said this before, we don't know what we don't know. So learning, um, knowing the questions to ask and asking them, and not having trouble just saying, you know what, this isn't the one for me, and walking away for whatever reason it may be. And like you said, it's my Gene and I, when we first got married, Gene said he wanted to go to the pound and get a dog. And he said, he said, we have to know we're ready, because there's no way you walk into the pound and walk out without a dog. And I mean, you may end up with a disaster, and that's not going to work. So you really have to be ready and know. And it's the same thing. You can't, baby, there's nothing in this world cuter than a baby goat bouncing around. And
Oh, yeah.
but you gotta know what you're getting into and ask all the questions. Like you said, diseases, get the paperwork, or even knowing the breed, is the breed going to provide what you need? And um yeah, yeah. So
Right.
Kelly, that
Anyway,
that was a
that's
good
lot.
thought. We did go over just slightly, but I think those are all good thoughts, and they're important thoughts. And I'd rather finish the conversation than cut it short, for sure. So I just, gosh, I appreciate your wisdom and your willingness to share it, because it was hard earned, huh?
Yeah, it was a little bit, but and I think that I appreciate you saying that, but I'm always like, I am not the expert. There are some really fantastic people. I'm doing my best to live it out and making mistakes every day. And I'd be like, I'm at the point where I go over this list, everything that we've talked about every day, because I want to make sure I'm making good choices. And like, do I want to be doing cows and goats? Like, what's the most economical? What's not, like, am I utilizing everything? So it's always good to check yourself a little bit. Yeah.
Is to remember, there will be days, no matter how sure you are, there will be I mean, my calf's only 7 months old, but there have been a couple times when I was like, I don't think I'm made out to be a milk cow mom. But you get over it quick. You can't let the emotions win. And yeah, because it is worth it in the end. But there are definitely days that it's like, I never mind.
I agree.
Oh, so okay. Well, Kelly, thank you very much. And be sure, if you're listening, be sure to subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and we'll keep the good stuff coming.
Yay.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks.